Okay, so if you remember, I kind of saw these numbers and they reminded me of something that there's an actual starting setup. Yeah, that's present everywhere. So player 4 is over here, for example. Player 3 is here. I go my usual kind of counterclockwise. Players 1 and 5. For whatever that matters. And also in here, we have these. So we're ready to go. And let's test this out again. I'm not going to be using the auction timer thing. I'm going to be going offline. So, blue is going to start things, and he draws a card. Ah, it's a timer card. Oh, by the way, these cards are a pain in the ass to shuffle. Tiny cards are always kind of painful, but these don't riffle well, and when you try bridging them, they're just a mess because they're so tiny. I'm sure it's no problem if you put them in slick little plastic sleeves so that they fly all over the place. Okay, so nothing special happens on the 1585 turn, so we just keep drawing. And we get another time card, and that can happen. Now, everybody in turn has to pick something that they want to have more of the commodity in. This is a hard thing. The commodity market comes up soon. Blue could up their rating, and they make the first choice. They could up their rating in this one right away. And that'll guarantee them first place in what is probably then going to become the last valued thing. That's not terribly interesting to them. They could be tied for first in it, which is almost as good, and maybe get a second place in the first one. So that's what they're going to do. And we're going to kind of go through and see. So yellow's position here. They're already tied for first in what's ranked third. So now their question is, do they want to be tied for first or second maybe in the first thing? At 160 tied for first mean a three-way tie means they're going to be worth about 50, whereas tied for first down here on the second would be worth about 60. It's hard to tell. I'm going to jump into the second place one. But now purple says, well, I can get first alone in second, and that's worth a decent amount. And you can do these calculations quickly, and I may make some mistakes. Likewise, orange is going to boost ahead. Now, for green, their question is a little harder, but they're going to burst ahead as well, just to take care of what happens there. And we keep drawing, and it's conceivable we could go through all the time before anybody gets any actions. All right, so now here's our first card. Anywhere in the world, silks. Now, I like silks, but nobody's competing with me in them. I'm not sure I particularly want this card to even exist. Of course, somebody could compete with me in silks very easily, but I think I'm just going to throw it in the trash bin. And now the second one is any commodity over here in last stage, region. This is of interest to me because I've already got something there. I'm going to take this as my action, and I think I resolve it immediately. I'll push my way in there, and I can take any commodity I like. Well, I'm going to take a tie in the kitty litter. Now, this forces what the auction's going to be, and it's going to be Africa, any commodity. And now I have to go offline for a little bit as I try to figure out what each person's going to bid and why. At least their view of the bid. So for one thing, you kind of walk into these auctioning games with this, well, damn, I don't know what anything's worth, right? In the two-player game, I was able to get to that eventually. Actually, my wife was outbidding me all the time because I'm very cautious. But let's get a little feel for maybe what something's worth. So what you're going to get here is a space on the Africa chart, which right now, that'll come available over here. Africa is probably second rate but there's no way of guaranteeing that. Fire truck. I wonder who's burning. I hope it's not me. You can't really tell where things are going to be positioned here, but it's probably second or third rate. Hard to tell. And I'm trying to remember where I am. Oh yeah. Which means getting a tie in it or whatever is not going to be worth a whole lot, but it's worth maybe 60 for the next auction there. It's also going to be worth that some value for succeeding auctions or succeeding scoring rounds, and there's 2 more of those world scoring rounds. Great. That's one. And secondly, you get a commodity out of it. The commodity is also probably worth that. So you can probably say it's a fair guess that this is worth over 100,000 guilders at this stage in the game. However, there's an opportunity cost. You don't have a lot of money at the beginning of the game. Your money's only used for bidding, but maybe if you can't get things at a discount, it's better to let other people run out their money. Of course, they might take their loan out at that point. All right, I'll put some thinking, some die rolling, whatever into this, and we'll come up with what we're going to see for where people intend to. And so here's the difference. When I'm using this thing, sometimes you hit it because you think somebody else is going to hit it, even though maybe you didn't mean to bid that much. Sometimes you hit it, you let it run out too long because, well, you're thinking, I don't think they are going to take it. I'll wait till the next mark or whatever. So there's a lot of kind of randomness in that. Now, I think my system is fairly random anyway, so I don't think that's terribly bad. But what it does mean is that even after you've decided something psychologically, you may not choose to follow that decision that you made from an intellectual point of view, which is to say, you make this clear, rational decision. This is how much it's worth to me. I'm willing to pay exactly this much, and you wait for that. Well, sometimes you find yourself bidding early or bidding later than you maybe intended to, thinking that you can squeak out a little bit more value, a little bit lower bid. Just some weirdness about it. All right, I'll be back. I went with a base bid of 100. I went to see who's willing to go 100, who's willing to go above 100. A couple of people had plans for bids at 100. This guy ended up getting it for 120. I think that's about what it's worth in its short-term range. Now, he just bought the Africa chit. So this gets him into Africa. That doesn't matter too much, but now he has his choice of commodities. Now, he can't take just anything. He can only take the things that are in Africa. Jewels, spice, or I don't remember what they are. Oh, well. No, this is spice. This is sugar. Okay. Jewels, sugar, or spice. So, what do I want? Well, I really want to be first in spice, even though there are some reasons to diversify. I'm not going to get much except maybe off silk. Yeah, I'm going to challenge blue. He challenged me. I'm going to challenge him in silk as well. So now we're both in there. Okay. That's the first player's turn. These cards just sweep up, and they form sort of this massive discard pile that'll be building up. And now we go to the yellow player. I need a break. Fortunately, this is one of those games where it's kind of hard to come up with a narrative that's going on. I mean, I'm not saying the design doesn't mimic something, but the rationales aren't simulative in nature. The input is this sort of random card structure. It just doesn't feel like it provides a a proper simulation nature, but that's fine. Beyond that, though, something worse for me is kind of I can't step back and make any sense out of the game except by drawing the cards. I can say, oh, look, so-and-so's increased, they've got a lot of this commodity in play. But that's more of just describing the game state than being able to come up with some sort of story about what's going on here. All I'm doing is drawing. And oh, look, what is my strategy with this? It's got nothing to do with any real world decision. What do I want to do with this card? Do I want to make it available? Do I not? I could do some mental gymnastics to try to put it into place. Now this is an interesting card for yellow because I can place here, get a bridge across, and get 40,000 extra bucks that way. Alternatively, and get incidentally second place in one of those. That's kind of nice. It also will give me, it looks like gems, first place. So I'm going to grab that one. But that means my next two cards aren't mine, unless I win the auction. Okay, one of them, now this wouldn't be played in 3-player, it would count as just a non-play. But one of them is going to be somebody gets to pick 3 commodity bonuses. These are powerful and valuable cards. I'm not sure I particularly want or don't want to put that in the auction. If I thought I could win it at the price I want to pay, it would be of some interest. Everyone else is kind of behind. I've made some extra money. I'm going to throw this card up for auction because I think maybe I can either afford it more or hurt people more by them buying it. And then my final card has to be drawn anyway, just because the balance of the cards works out that way. And this one would have been in any commodity and a warehouse. But that goes in the discard. I should have actually handled this auction before I draw that card, but that's okay. So I'll go into the auction situation. How much is this one worth? It's 3 places on the commodities market. Remember, I was looking at, maybe things are worth about 60,000 per pip elsewhere. We're still fairly early in the game. We haven't hit any scoring. So I would say this one's probably worth a little bit more than these. I get one place on one of these on say the warehouse and one space over on the commodities. So right now this might be of more value. The problem is pure commodities picks or commodities picks that go with the warehouse eventually become less valuable because eventually you do hit the edge on some of your picks. Which is to say you might not be competing at all in something and not be interested in it. At this point in the game, I think that is a pretty interesting card, and I'm going to probably base my auction at around 150 and see where people go with it. Of course, they may tailor their own money to, hey, how much, or their own bids to how much money do I have left, because maybe I can't afford this card at 150. All right, I'll be rolling some dice. 2 people had 160 bids. Yellow, who I gave a guaranteed baseline bid to. They wouldn't have brought this into play if they weren't willing to bid it. And blue, of course, different people may value things differently, and we have to keep an eye on that. Ended up winning the toss-off, the time-off in terms of who hit this first at the right value, or however you want to see that. It was just a quick dice-off for me. Now, blue gets to move 3 things forward on the commodities track. First of all, I'm going to grab first place here, and a tie for second looks the best that I can do right now. Now, once I get all 4 of my commodities up here, I get something. What is it, a warehouse or something like that? This is one thing that I dislike, is there is no player aid. Although, no, I know the back of the rules sometimes tell me. And these things are not easily rememberable. This one's going to be in a warehouse once somebody reaches that. Other ones are a big pile of money, which is actually probably more valuable. And that's the end of the yellow player's turn. And we just keep cranking our way down, with purple getting the discs now, and the draws. And you can see it's a fairly fast-paced game, actually. The timer takes up a lot of effort, though. The timer, you're watching it click down, and, you know, it takes, I think, about a minute or two to run the whole course. It feels like that's really eating up time in a way that other auctions don't. So this is Africa anything. Well, I'm already in Africa. I think I'm going to bury this, because oh, now wait a minute. I could get first place in Africa with that. Yeah, let's take this. So we'll grab first place in Africa. And we get to, oops, that's not Africa. We get to take gems if we want, which will give me a first place in gems as well. So now I've upped my position on that. Second card is the Americas anything. I don't care about the Americas, although I may be interested in them. This is not a bad card for me to have come up. So I'm going to put this one up for auction. And what is the baseline on this? Again, we're early. It's probably around 120 value, so say about 100 for the baseline bidding. And again, this is just guesstimating. So if I, yeah, I think everybody's kind of interested in this to some extent or another, so I'll be back in a bit. All right, purple picked this one up actually fairly high at 130. Again, maybe they were valuing it more, but now how do I work that into my system? Well, I don't know. But what do we want with purple? Well, we don't really need more gems, and we don't want to concentrate on those. Silk is probably the least activated thing, so we're going to grab the silk with the idea that now we've got a tie for second there, and we've got the advantage there. And the third card again goes into the discard, and it's a shipping card. And I guess we'll do another one of these or two. It is kind of tiresome solo. But it's kind of exciting when you're playing not solo to draw these cards. Oh, what's this? This is anywhere in the world silk. Now, orange is vaguely interested in silk, but maybe not terribly so. This isn't a horrible card. It could be used in a lot of places for me. I'm going to put that up for auction. And now we immediately jump into an auction. And again, I think it's worth about the same still. Is orange more interested than other people? Not terribly, or they would have just sucked it down themselves. Okay, purple gets this one again. I'm curious if I'm doing this right in the card play. Yeah, I'm not. You should be drawing all the cards before you run the auctions. It doesn't make much difference except you know what the other person has already. Purple picked this up for 110. One excuse for paying, say, 130 instead on one of and 110 on something almost exactly the same is that sometimes you move too quickly. This isn't a sealed bid game, even though it feels similar to it. It's not quite sealed bid, because there is this kind of interactive aspect of that timer. Anyway, I'll keep doing things in this order for this turn, and then next turn I'll switch to what you're supposed to do, which is you play out all the cards, and then the discard is handled, then which doesn't really do anything. Then the mare, which allows you to play your own piece, and then finally the auction. All right, so let's do purple. Anywhere in the world. Well, they could grab a first place here, but there's no silk there. So they're going to have to go somewhere else. They'll go for a tie for first here and a silk. Remember, they have to take that commodity. All right, on to orange. What do we have here? Any commodity here. This is kind of nice for them. They're going to take this one. And any commodity, what do they want? They want to jump up to first place tied in what may be the best thing out there. And then we have a discard, another 3 commodities thing. All right. And just for evening, I'm going to give the 5th player the same rules of things are triggered as they draw them. So here, any commodity in this zone. I mean, it's not a bad card. It's not terribly useful to me, except for the commodity aspect. I'm in competitions there. I'm going to put this up for auction. Now this is, this is not terribly interesting to Orange, even though he has pieces here, because whoever wins it isn't going to take their first place away. Everyone else gives them a second place and a commodity marker. So this may be actually worth a little less than some of the others to some people, because all it's going to give them is a second place over here at best, and nothing for Orange. I'm not sure where I'm setting that, probably closer to 90 on this one for everybody. I want another one at 100. Now they're down to almost no money. Money's open in this, I believe. I would like to grab something near so that maybe I'll get a bridge later. This one's probably more likely to cut Orange there. And I'm allowed to take any commodity on this. So, well, we'll grab ourselves first place in the silks. But we've spent heavily there. And now, time passes. Nothing happens on this space. Time passes. Something happens. Everybody gets, starting with green, the opportunity to play somewhere in the world. All right. What does green want to do? Well, probably green's biggest interests are the area of the world they're involved in already, and maybe the commodities. Well, area of the world is pretty easy. Let's go for that. But what commodity do we want to play in? Do we want to play in gems or spice? Both are available. Both are rare. Or, sorry, sugar. Both are fairly rare. I'll go with sugar and get myself in that market. And yes, I'm not getting any value off this, but someday it may turn up well. Now we go back to blue. Where's blue interested in? Well, blue could run for a tie there, and they're interested in sugar and maybe silks. They can't get sugar there. A first place finish in this looks more important than being there. So I want to find sugar. There's sugar here. There's sugar here and sugar here. I could go for a first place finish, a tie for first in these guys. I'll go over here and take a sugar. Yellow gets to do one of these. Yellow's interested in the Asian area. They would also like to get their gems up, and they can do both in one shot. So that's a pretty good find for them. Got to remember who started this. Green. Purple. Well, purple could get first place in the Americas. That sounds good. And there are gems in the Americas which will give me a first place. So let's go for that. Now sometimes you got to be careful, because usually the difference between first and second is worthwhile, but sometimes actually it's not that big a deal. To make that switch, I think. It depends on what the commodity is, actually. Which position is more important and how much more it's valuable. And you really have to think about these things. All right, I just did purple. That means we're on the last one, which is orange. Orange could tie for first over here. That's appealing, or tie for first here. What are they interested in? They're interested in sugar. And that's about it. So to get sugar, well, we'll grab the only sugar here, because that gives me more options there, or something like that. All right, and that was the time marker, so we keep drawing, and we get spices anywhere in the world. Well, as green, I'm vaguely interested in spices, but more interested in not having people get them, so I'll throw that. And now I get stuck with any commodity over here. Well, that's a pretty good pick for me. I'll go to the bridge where I can get extra money, and I get to pick my commodity. There's nothing I'm terribly excited about, to tell you the truth. I'll boost my way in that one. None of the commodities are working terribly well for me. Alright, that's one time around, and I think this video is long enough that we can make this the first play video of the playthrough. I'm really not sure whether I can go to any level of a broader view of the game. And I guess that's what I was saying a little earlier, is okay, great, you know, I can show you each action as it goes, but I don't think I can pull away from the individual actions and tell you much about the game, except, oh look, somebody's advancing on these. I'm not sure why. So there's kind of this story that happens in, say, an 18xx game in my head that I just don't get here. Here I would just say, well, some pieces were placed. I don't have that. I don't have a real grasp on this underlying narrative that ties it all together. Both games, you know, have lots of little decisions, many of which can impact many things, and you can look at it in a lot of detail. But XX is more like a war game in that you can kind of craft a story out of it. This, I don't know what there is beyond the placement of the pieces in a lot of ways. Not that it's not thematic or topical or anything like that. What it is just not conducive to that narrative. And the narrative's important to me, especially on the bits. All right, let's put this one